Okay, ladies, we are back for part 2 on income producing assets. So last week we talked about the quadrant, and we talked about if we're on the left-hand side of the quadrant, we're always going to be stuck in some sort of financial struggle because we're selling our time for money. We want to get onto the right-hand side of the quadrant where we own an income producing asset, whether that asset is a business up the top right-hand side of the quadrant or an investment down the bottom right-hand side of the quadrant. That's where we have our money making money for us, and we're tapping into leverage, and our income is not reliant on us selling our own time, which is risky business, even though most people think that's the safe way to be, selling our time for money, safe, secure, got a job, we know we're getting the paycheck, it feels like we have more certainty over there. But we talked about last week, we really, if we're ever going to create anything other than a mediocre financial situation, we need to take the leap and get over onto the right-hand side of the quadrant. So today, what we're going to talk about is how do we decide what that income producing asset is going to look like? And so Nick and I have created a really simple checklist so that we can make a principle-based objective decision about whether there's so many income producing assets out there, right? But they're not all the same. They're not all great. Some are good money, some are not so good money. And Nick will share with one of her income producing assets that she realized after a while was not so good money. So we have this checklist so we're not making emotional decisions about which income producing assets to choose. So what we don't want to do is have a friend come and say, oh my gosh, you should jump in and buy this income producing asset. And we get all emotional and we feel like, oh, what if she gets rich and I don't and I missed out? So yeah, I'm going to say yes, even though I don't really understand it. And I don't really know why I'm saying yes, but she said it was good. So I think it might be good. We don't want to be that girl, right? We don't want to be that woman. We want to be making principle-based objective decisions around how we use our money. But first, we need to take a step back because there's an order of things. We need to create the chunk of capital to invest in the income producing asset. So whether it's a business that needs our money to get started, or we want to buy an established business, or whether we want to invest in a more passive type of income producing asset. So we have our money just kind of ticking away and making money. Either way, we need a chunk of capital to get started. So where does that come from? And this is where we want to have maybe the unpopular conversation today, the one that maybe doesn't feel so good, but it needs to be said out loud, and we need to have a reality check because we've come a long way in the last 2 generations in terms of our behavior around money compared to how grandma behaved around money. And we always like to look back at what did grandma say and what did grandma do? She lived very differently, and she could, because we've talked about this a lot. The situation was different back then. We talked about this in the last video as well. However, she had some great principles which are being quickly forgotten and quickly left behind. And that's why so many women say to me and say to Nick, I can't afford to invest in an income producing asset, but they've got the fake fingernails, they've got the fake eyelashes, they've got the filler, they've got they're dining out a couple of times a week, they can afford to go out for breakfast, they can buy the coffee, they can go out for dinner, they can order in. All of those things are things grandma would never have done until the income producing asset was making extra money. And that extra money, they're the things that go towards the lifestyle. Grandma would never have borrowed money for the car and gone, oh, actually, the car loan place said that I could actually borrow a bit more than that car, so maybe I'll upgrade to the fancier car. Grandma never did that. Grandma lived in the smallest house that she could afford, that her money could buy. She didn't go and get a big mortgage and live in a much bigger house than she actually could afford. Grandma didn't pretend around money, and there's a lot of pretense going on. Just because the bank will loan us $1 million doesn't mean we should go borrow $1 million. Yet what I see is everyone just getting the biggest loan they possibly can to live in the biggest house they possibly can, which it just doesn't make sense. the order of things is all out of whack. And that's why people are in a financial struggle. Okay, so let's talk more about that, Nick, first. Let's do order of things, and then we can move on to the checklist.
Yeah, I love that. So there's a couple of key things just with what you're sharing, Jen, and I just don't want anyone to skip past it because it's so valuable. How do you understand the order of things? I think that is important because we're not getting taught that, because we're getting sold. We talk about this a lot, the self-love marketing machine. We're getting sold shiny. We're getting sold keep up with the neighbor. And so an order of things helps us, like you said, hold on, what makes sense? What is my next step here? Rather than making those emotional decisions. I share this often, is that anything that we think of, like if we think we're training, think of training for a marathon, think of cooking your favorite dish, think of horse riding. I know that for you, Jen. I think of horse riding. Like really, you're not going to just jump on the horse from day one and go jumping over some barricades. What would that be called? What's that one called?
Jumping? Eventing?
Eventing, there we go. Like, I don't think you're going eventing from day one. Maybe you're learning how to put the saddle on. Maybe you're learning how to, connect with the horse and even just put your foot in and get the first leg over. So anything that we think of in life, there's an order of things, right? Like Annika in our Women to Wealth, she always comes to our calls every week with just so much wisdom because she's a farmer and there's so many lessons on the land. It's like, well, no, first to get the tomatoes and be eating them around the dinner table with your family, guess what? They're planted first and they need to weather some storms. They're planted, they're nurtured, there's a process, then the time comes and then they get to be enjoyed and they get to nourish her family. And I think in our world, speaking to, because really we're talking about mindset. One, we're talking about understand and order of things, but I think there's a part of it which is, are you disciplined enough to follow that order of things? And the world is really noisy. So I think a really cool thing to understand is going, or even asking ourselves, would grandma do this? What would be her advice? When the world is noisy, when you're getting influenced by hype and excitement and emotion or fear of missing out, I think is a really big one. We need to go back to what are the principles? What are fundamental principles? Because my position could be very different to Laura's position over there, like very different. And so our unique circumstances, they really matter. That's the first thing to understand. Because we can see a lot of women going, I just want passive income. I remember, Jen, when we started Women to Wealth and we launched our Women to Wealth method, and I was doing the sales calls. I would do the sales calls because we needed to test. Do women want this? Do we understand your problem? As what we're doing, is it going to be able to help? Let me get on the calls with these women. Most women would say, well, I want passive income. But their understanding of what passive income was out of whack. Like selling your candles at the workshop on the weekend down at the markets isn't passive income. It's just a secondary income stream. And so a lot of people are like, yeah, this is my passive income. It's not passive income. So there was a misunderstanding of what passive income was, but then there was also this misconception of what it takes as well, which is what you're talking about. It's like, well, the order of things is we either need the lump, like we need the cash first because passive is money making money. So you can't leverage zero. And so a woman who's in a position of a week's worth of rent, thinking about what she's going to buy for passive income because the money bucket, remember the 5 resource bucket, it's empty. So instead, we look at the other parts of the quadrant and we go, how do you maximize the top left being linear? How do you maximize self-employed? How do you maximize maybe stepping in and building a business with the skills that you have, the time that you have, the sweat equity that you can put in? So again, just a bit of a recap to go, there is an order of things. Understand the resource buckets, which is what we spoke about on the last drop. And then I think it's the mindset. Something you said, Jen, was we can get really, we can be influenced by the excitement of someone, which is great, but then we want to be able to be grounded by a principle-based decision, which is what we're going to go through. But I think we can also be influenced to not take opportunities. Like on the call this week, Sarah, who is awesome, she always brings the best questions. and she's looking at a really cool income producing asset. But there was fear that came up with it as well. And so if we don't have these principle-based guides to help us, yes, sometimes we go into something and it's like, man, blind Freddie could see that that was not good for you. We went in because our friend Sally said it would be good. But on the flip side, we can also pull back and not lean into opportunities because the fear comes up and the uncertainty comes up because we don't know what to look at, which is what we're going to go through today. Like, we don't know what to go, hey, what should I ask some questions around? What do I need to understand first? And therefore we miss opportunities as well, and we don't go for it.
So let's go through this objective checklist, because it really helps us make clear decisions without using emotion around whether a particular income producing asset is suitable for us. Because again, and we talk about this all of the time in our programs, our individual circumstances do matter, and we're all on a different place in the journey. That's all. And as long as we're willing to keep learning and to keep taking steps forward, keep taking action, then the learning is the same, the pathway is the same, we're just at a different place. So first thing, number one, skills. Okay, so when we're looking at an income producing asset, and again, remember we talked about the buckets. So how full your buckets are will help you. So understanding that will help you take a look at this checklist, because you will know which buckets you have full to utilize and which buckets are empty or maybe only half full that you can't utilize. Whereas Nick or I or someone else might look at the same income producing opportunity or the same income producing asset, and because we've got different fullnesses of each of our buckets, it might be something that we say yes to or something that we say no to. Okay, so first thing, skills. Do you have an unfair advantage can you move the needle with this income producing asset because you have a skill set already in this area? So what do you already have? And again, go back to this bucket and really do an audit on what are your skills. So many women that I talk to are like, yeah, I don't think I'm really good at anything. Rubbish. Unless you're 16, you have life experience, you have work experience, you have done things, you've just forgotten all of the things that you do. And perhaps you're just not looking at the things, your skill sets, as skills because they're just innate to you. You don't even think that you're good at it, but other people look at you and go, wow, I wish I could do that. I wish I was good at that. And so if you don't know what your skills are, go back, look at all the jobs you've had and use Opoly, for goodness sake, to help you. Then create some sub lists of, okay, in that job, what did I do? What am I good at? So for example, I never thought I was good at sales because I was a physiotherapist. I'm like, I fix people's knees and necks and backs, like nothing to do with sales. And I realized when I really started to look at it that I was selling all day long. So Nick would come to me, say, Jen, I've got a sore neck. I would say, okay, Nick, let's do a few tests. Let's figure out what's wrong. Then I would say to her, here's what I think is going on, Nick. And here's what I think you need to do to fix your neck. So I was selling her a solution to her problem. And then the next patient would walk in, same process, another sale, same process, another sale. So I realized, oh my gosh, I'm actually really good at sales. This is what I've done for years. And so look at your skills and look more closely at your skills and start to get really clear. You might have people say, oh my gosh, you're just so, some people are so good at hospitality. Like you go to their place for dinner and the table's beautiful and they've spent all day food prepping and you can just tell they have this gift around hospitality. They just love it. Other people, you go for dinner, it's like, oh, should we order pizza? And it's kind of like a 10 p.m. afterthought. Like they don't have the gift of hospitality so much. So you have innate skills and you can use them. But you might be going, I've got lots of number 2 right now. I've got 500K. I don't know what to do with it. I'm really like my skills are being utilized over here. My time is being utilized over here, and I just want to put my money to work. I want my income producing asset to take my money and have my money make money, but I don't have the capacity right now to give skills or to give time. See what I mean by individual circumstances matter? You might go, well, I don't have much money, but I do have skills, and everyone can find more time. It's just time is just a matter of prioritization. So you might go, okay, so I don't have the money, but I do have the skills and I do have the time. So I'm going to find an income producing asset that I can maximize or optimize using my skills and my time. Okay, and we can talk more. Nick, let's talk through from your perspective on the skills, money, time before we go to 4 and 5, risk and reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. First thing that I'll say that came up listening to that, Jen, and I think it needs to be spoken about as well, is that most things, like unless it's, as you said, $500,000, $1 million, like you got the chunk of money and it can go into buying the asset, and therefore that asset is making the money, right? Money making money. Unless you're in that position, it's so important to know that we're going to have to put skills and time in somewhere, that eventually we trade off, right? So if I put it in now, can it buy back my time later? So we don't want to always having to sell the time, but I don't know if there's anything, like think of business, right? Even Women to Wealth, like starting Women to Wealth. Remember I said I was doing the sales calls. That is time. That is me selling some time. But we had to do that first in order to create the systems that create the leverage. So no matter what it is we're choosing, at some point, we're going to have to look at our skills and we're going to have to look at our time. We're going to have to look at some sweat equity, but we get to choose where we put it. So think of it this way. When you're hired for a job, you are hired for your skills, which means you're hired for the value they see in you, but you get paid for the input of your time. So you're getting hired for your value, but they're paying you based on your time predominantly. So the difference is to turn your skill into an income producing asset, and it still is, you're still using your skill to get paid, but in a really limited, capped way, because you only have so many hours to give that job. You can package up that same skill, you can identify your unique skills like Jen said, and you can take them to the market in a different way, which eventually will help you build in leverage. So you're not getting paid for the hours in, you're getting paid for the value that you produce. One is capped, one is uncapped. Both produce income, but one has way more potential. So that's a way to look at it. And the thing that I want to say is no matter what, we have to put it in somewhere. I always say that to myself, Nick, you got to put it in somewhere. The skill is, and Jen, you've taught me this really well, is knowing, hey, I get to choose what to put it into. So what is worth my time? What is worth my skills? What is worth my sweat equity? Because for me, and I said this in last week's episode, the grandmother of all financial goals for me is my time, is having ownership of time, is being able to be present with who I want, being able to do the things that I want, being able to do work with Jen, like people that I want to do work with. In order to have the result of that, I need to have ownership of my time. So to buy it back, I got to put it in somewhere first. I got to put it into an asset. I've got to put it into a machine. I've got to do something with it. But where am I going to put it in that eventually it allows me to buy it back? That's what I've been focused on for 10 years now. For 10 years, it's taken that time, like really developing that skill that you often talk about, Jen. And like I said, I learned this from you, is knowing what to say yes to. Like knowing where should I spend my time and on what. And so just know that we've got to put the sweat equity in somewhere, which is our skills and is our time combined. And then write this down, because we speak about this in our program in Women to Wealth with our ladies. So an income producing asset, there's only kind of 3 ways that we obtain them. So we either buy them. So we use the resource of money that's buying it. We build it. So let's look at Women to Wealth. Like that's a business. Jen and I have built that. It's taken our skills, our experience, our time, our money, but we've built it, or we borrow. And what I mean by borrow is we leverage. So it's a bit of a mix. It's like, oh, there's something already created. There's something already out there. It exists. It's already proven. So maybe it's already generating revenue. Maybe it's already solving problems. It's proven. Oh, I can borrow that and bring my skills, my money, my time to it. So I'm not starting it from scratch. They're all the different ways. So I'll give some examples, because I know you mentioned there's one which, and we can talk about this, which good money versus not good money. So one of the assets that I bought in my 20s was poker machines. No, I did not run a casino, but my parents owned a pub. God love them. They bought this pub just when I was turning 18. Good timing, wasn't it? It's great timing. This is brilliant. I think it's a great business decision, mum and dad. Let's go ahead and buy the pub. This is just brilliant. So I bought a poker machine. And with the poker machine, let's run it through. It's a buy option. Did it require skills from me? I don't know. Have you gone to the poker machine rooms? Like, is there a skill requirement? It's literally a money-making machine. And then at the end of every month, it gets reconciled and then the payout starts, you know? It was on paper the best income producing asset that I had bought to date. Bought better ones now. Now it costs about 100 grand. So I'm like, I needed the money. So I wouldn't be able to buy that if my money bucket was 5K. So I needed the money to buy the thing, but it didn't need time from me. God love my mother. She would reconcile it every month. I wasn't even living in the town anymore. So I was living somewhere else. Just every month I got whatever I made from that machine. It didn't need skills at all. It just sits there in a room. It just needed money. So that's an example of a buy. Example of a build, and we can speak to this, is Women to Wealth. You built a physio practice. It's you building it, which in my experience, it does take more effort and it does take the skill and it does take more of, it's like the runway might be a bit longer to get off the ground. Like you're putting it in, test and measure, building the thing. The cool thing about it is you have ownership of it and you have influence in it. There's levers to, right? Like after 2 years of doing the sales course for Women to Wealth, we had levers to pull. It was like, awesome. Time back for me now. I don't need to do that. We did that groundwork. Now we can put in systems or we can change our offering or whatever it might be. So you have influence over it, but that's a build example. Then a borrowing. And this is a big one that, I mean, it ticked all the boxes for us and we'll go through it, but it's actually a mix of both. Buying off-the-shelf software nodes, that's a buy. It already exists. But the borrow is going, well, the product exists, the technology exists, it all kind of is there. What I can do is borrow that and help build communities and build sales, generate sales, and then I've got another income producing asset that sits there. So there's this mix. It's understanding. It's like I'm either going to buy the thing, build the thing, borrow the thing. We suggest doing all three eventually. But again, it's probably an order of things and tapping into, okay, is it skills that I have that I can leverage right now? Is it money? Is it time? Is it a mix of all three? Did I explain that okay? I might have went off course a little bit.
You did. You did. I would suggest to anyone listening though, if that still doesn't make sense, just click rewind and listen to that again. Because when we talk about fundamentals, that's fundamental. You have to understand what Nick just explained so that you can make any sort of positive decision moving forward. And it's the lack of understanding of those basic fundamentals that keeps women stuck. So once you get that, your reticular activating system is starting to filter the world differently, and you start to see things for really what they are and for what they are not. And that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to program your reticular activating system so that it has a different lens, so that it has a different filter, because that's the difference between staying in the struggle and creating financial abundance and creating financial independence. It's a different RAS operating. And how to get your RAS operating differently is just educate yourself. It's really not that hard, But again, to educate yourself, it's sitting down to do the boring stuff when, you know, it's easier to flick on Netflix or go out and have coffee with the girls or whatever. So now, so go back and really re-listen to that, and remember this. If you have capital, or the people who have capital, money is just sweat equity already converted. Really. So remember back in the last video, I talked about the sweat equity, walking up and down the rows of the peanuts to save up, like, and then taking the capital to buy the cow, and then watching the cow eat grass and have babies was so much more fun. But that's the income producing asset, right? That's the had to do the sweat equity. So money. So when you go, it's, I think a lot of people go, but I don't have the money, I can't afford that. That's the wrong thing to say. It's like, actually, you know what? I need to convert some sweat equity so that I have it. How am I going to convert the sweat equity? I'm just going to say this. I think, again, think back to grandma, grandpa, and all their friends were willing to do the jobs that people don't want to do today. And that's why they created the sweat equity. They were willing to get the second job, willing to get the third job if that's what they needed to do, and create the equity from the sweat. What I see today is a whole lot of people who, I don't want to do that job. Oh, I don't want to get a second job. I mean, I saw a post last week or this week, and Sunrise, which is a news channel here in Australia, had done a morning segment at how to deal with the coming recession. And they had 3 suggestions. One was buy cheaper food. 2 was save up 6 months worth of income, which is actually, buy cheaper food. That's just going to make you feel worse, have less energy, have less productivity, creativity. Don't love that suggestion. Save up 6 months. Everyone should have 6 months worth of income saved up. Absolutely. And then the other one was get a second job. And the resistance in the comments was fascinating, because people were like, well, if I could save 6 months, well, then I would have 6 months. Like, what do you think, you know? And I don't want to get a second job. I want to live my life. Like, I don't want to get a second job. You know what? There are seasons in our life where we need to get a second job so we can save 6 months of income. But all of those people were just counting themselves out because they don't understand the order of things. They don't understand that, yeah, we're going to have to convert some sweat equity. We're going to have to sweat more if we want more equity, so that we can put that equity and get it working for us, so we don't have to do the work anymore. That's just the order of things. But it's like we're living in this world right now that's forgotten that. It's like, oh no, I've got a spare $5. I'm going to quickly spend it as fast as I can. And we're not teaching our kids this stuff. So our kids are just not growing up with grounded principles, because they're like, oh, I can't afford to leave home because I'm spending all of my money on crap, basically. The order of things is all wrong. So let's talk now about risk and reward. So first general principle to understand is usually high risk is high reward, low risk is low reward. You've got to remember that. That's just how it works, right? If you want to sit your money in the bank, typically it's low risk, but you're probably going to get 2% per annum on it, maybe 3% per annum. Low risk, low reward, right? Now, high risk, it can have a higher reward for sure, but it's higher risk. So you need to be prepared for that. And that's why we talk about diversification and having percentages of our capital, some in low risk, low reward, some, and then a small part maybe in high risk, high reward. But what we see a lot of is people going, oh, well, I want to screw the low risk, low reward. I'm going to go do this because, you know, it's guaranteed 17% a month. Anything, here's a little rule of thumb, principle based. If it's guaranteed high reward, see the red flag waving. Please see the red flag waving. because it's probably not going to last. And what happens when it doesn't last? You lose your capital. Okay, so it's finding this balance. But really, if something's guaranteed high reward, there is no such thing. So that's a false promise, and you should see the red flag that is. And that's I probably don't want to say too much more about that because we could get into a whole nother conversation.
Well,
So
yes, just to tie a bow on that, because we can get into a whole nother conversation. Maybe that'll be another drop. But it is important. Like the other principle in what you're saying is one does not exist without the other. So a risk doesn't exist unless there's a reward. A reward doesn't exist unless there's a possibility of a risk. And so part of it, again, it is another big conversation, is looking at who we are, how we make decisions, but also how we respond to results. Because I see a lot of women who are people, not women, but women 12. A lot of people who are okay because they're sold on the high reward. But as soon as, because remember, if it's high reward, it also means it's high risk. So as soon as it goes, oh, now we're over into the risk stage and maybe we haven't met that reward, not okay. Not okay emotionally, not okay in their position, not okay in their circumstance. And it's like, oh, like you got to be okay with worst case scenario. That's what I always think. I'm like, what's the worst case scenario in this? And if it happens, am I good? And if I'm not, then I'm like, oh, I'm not participating. Like I can't participate in that. I'm not good with that worst case scenario. Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely, Nick. And then that relates back to, again, so your circumstances matter. Who you are matters. So if you have a good recurring income stream, you might be okay with a higher risk, because if you lose it, it's like, you know what, you can recover from that. It might depend on your age. If you're 25, you've got your whole life to keep earning money. And if you're 65, like, wow, you don't want to really lose a chunk of what you've spent your whole life creating. So there is no income producing asset that's right for everyone, I think is really what we're trying to say here. And this is where it's up to you to understand these principles so you can and understand your circumstances and your personality. You know, some people get anxious about changing what they have for breakfast. It's just who they are, right? That's a big deal for them. Other people, they're happy to jump out of a plane. They're happy to leave tomorrow and live in another country. Like, not a problem. They have a higher need for uncertainty. They're always going to be the people that are okay. Oh yeah, I'll chuck 50 grand at that. I'll chuck 500 grand at that. If it disappears, oh well. Then they're not going to, you know, go into a state of depression because the risk, they risked it and they lost it. But some people, they just need so much certainty to be happy. So this is, again, we talk about this in our programs. You need to know you. Nothing is more important than you knowing you and then creating your life around who you are. So I want you to read what the writing might be a little bit short, small, depending on what your whether you're on your computer or your phone, but I want to read this for you under risk. It says, what is the likelihood of failure? How is the risk reduced? What is the downside? And what happens to your lifestyle if you're 100% wrong? Write those down, okay, and make sure whenever you're looking at an income producing asset, you can answer those clearly. Okay, so what's the likelihood of failure? How is the risk reduced? So, for example, if you're investing in something that creates cash flow, that means the risk is reducing with that cash flow. So if every week or every month, like, I don't know, Nick, you probably reconciled the pokey machine weekly. So that was cash flow. So if the pokey machine cost 100 grand, but 5 grand came in every week, then that means the risk after 1 week was now 95 grand. The week after 2 weeks was now 90 grand. So see how the risk is reducing? Whereas I've got some money invested in some startups. I've got 300K in one startup. I at the moment and 150K in another, there's no cash flow. Like they're really like a proper startup, and I wouldn't expect to see anything for 5 years. 3 to 5 years, you just know. But I knew going in that these were both 5-year investments, and so we're not at the 5-year mark, but I haven't reduced my risk because they're not creating cash flow, those particular investments. So it's know what you're going into. And again, your circumstances matter. And again, what's your portfolio? So I'm in a situation where I can allocate some of my capital to those type of investments, but you may not be. You might go, you know what, I only want to allocate some of my capital to something where I know I'm reducing the risk on a weekly or a monthly basis straight from the get-go, because your circumstances matter. Okay. And do consider, like Nick said, everyone's good when they're thinking about the reward. But when it does, what if the risk comes true? What if it goes 100% wrong and you lose everything? Please do consider that. Even cash in the bank, right? Banks go broke. Banks disappear, and we're in a crazy financial time in the world. So are you okay if your 300 grand that's sitting in the bank just disappeared because the bank disappeared? Is it likely? Not likely, but is it possible? Yes. Are you okay with that disappearing? Like, really do consider the absolute bottomed out downside. And when you do that, you'll start to realize, like, all of the places to put your money have their own, they all have risk. That yes, they all have reward, but they do all carry risk. There's not one that's risk-free, because if it's risk-free, it's reward-free. It's just how it is. Okay, and then look at the questions under reward. Does it produce cash flow today or growth for tomorrow, or both? Okay, so this is really important as well, because a lot of people just aren't even thinking about this. So my couple of examples that I just gave, 300K and the 150K and the 2 startups, they're about growth for tomorrow. They were not about cash flow. Whereas when I'm looking at owning nodes in a blockchain, I'm looking at that in terms of, well, it depends. If the blockchain's brand new and doesn't have a product to market yet, I'm looking at growth for tomorrow. Once that blockchain has a product generating revenue, then I'm looking at cash flow as well. So know what you're looking at, know why you're investing. That's really important. And then you can allocate your capital appropriately depending on what capital you have. And just never, I want to say one last thing here, Nick, before I hand back to you to close up. Never discount the sweat equity. And I think we're living in this world where a lot of people have developed a bit of an allergy to sweat equity. But here's what I know. Humans need purpose to be happy. And if the only purpose is to get out of bed and get to work and make some money, that's okay. If there's no bigger purpose that you've found right now than that, that's okay. Just make bank. My 12-year-old is at a cafe right now working, and her little wad of cash is just building up. And that's okay. If that's the purpose, is I just want to build the cash up. So, because she's saving for an income producing asset, just like my dad taught me to when I was 12. And so have a purpose, and the purpose can be just to get your ass out of bed to go to work today so that there's more money in your bank account than yesterday. That's fine. That's a great temporary purpose. And sweat equity, if you go out in the garden and get all hot and sweaty, you have a shower tonight, it feels so much better, that shower, when you wash all the sweat and BO off, than if you sat on the couch watching Netflix all day. You know that. So I just want to say, remember that, and don't be afraid to go and get a second job. Get a third job if you need to. I've had periods in my life where I've had 3 jobs. Just don't be afraid of that season of hard work. It's what it's going to take to get ahead.
I love that so much. There is nothing else to say except for probably re-listen to that whole back end bit. I think that's really important. There's a season of sacrifice. Like there's always a season of sacrifice. Hey, it's just when are you going to put it in? So good. I love it. Okay, I think we could wrap up there. And then just let us know what you loved about this. And then we will be dropping back in with another piece next week. I don't know what it's going to be yet. We'll see what questions come to the table. Actually, ask us questions. Maybe that will help us, Jen. And we'll jump back in with another little session next week as well. Loved it.
Super. Thanks for
Jen.
hanging out.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Bye.